All right, what's going on, you guys? This is Sean here for Venture Art House, and today I'm out here in Warwick, New York. We've currently got like the last of the fall foliage going on, so there's a lot of beautiful colors around me. I'm just shooting around with my Fuji X-T3, trying to get as much content, getting to know this camera as much as possible, and hopefully getting you guys to know this camera. So why are we here today? We're here today to discuss the Fuji F-Log internal on any of your Fuji cameras, from the XT2 to the XT3 or currently XH1. So what is F-Log? Take a look. Here's F-Log. Doesn't look too pretty, does it? Let's switch it right back, and here's a graded version of F-Log. So just getting into it, an overall analysis of what it is, how it helps you guys, and what it can do for your videos. F-Log is a color gamma built into the camera models listed that I just talked about. Basically what it does for you is it gives you the maximum dynamic range in your camera when shooting video. Now, what is dynamic range? Let's just have a quick lesson on that. Behind me, we have the sun peeking in through the trees, and it's coming down onto this little stream right behind me. And there's a lot of highlights, but right here, I'm currently standing in the shadows. Now, if you're shooting in contrasty picture profiles and everything, you're not gonna be able to see those highlights as well as the shadows where I'm currently standing that much at all. Either one or the other is gonna be exposed. So a lot of times that's not gonna look too pretty if you're shooting your subject and you're outside and you can see the sun, but your subject has shadows all over their face. Sometimes maybe that's the look that you're going for, but if you want both in exposure, I definitely recommend using F-Log in those higher dynamic range scenes. So what I would also recommend is don't use F-Log all the time. Now, it has its purpose. As I said, it's meant to get the most dynamic range, so ideally you want to shoot it in high dynamic range scenes like sunsets. Maybe you're doing real estate and you want to be able to see the outside of the house and you want to be able to see the inside of the house. F-Log is not a color gamma to use at nighttime. I repeat, do not use this. I did this before when I was shooting log gamma on a different camera. Don't use it at nighttime. So, now that we know a little bit about what it does and how it gives us dynamic range, let's talk about how to use F-Log in your Fuji camera. So the first thing that you want to do is line up your shot. The next thing that you want to do is make sure all of your settings are in manual. You don't want to have auto ISO, auto aperture, auto shutter, nothing like that at all, because then the exposure is going to constantly keep on changing all the time and you're going to run into a lot of trouble in post-production. Now, the next thing that you want to do is manually set your white balance. You can go in there, if you're still new to using white balance on video and camera, you can use the built-in white balance modes. You got sunny, you got shade, tungsten lights, you name it. So you can use those, or if you have a little like white balance card, you can put it in front of the Fuji camera and you can set your white balance manually for Kelvin temperature. Now, after you've set all of your settings manually, you're going to want to look on the left side of your screen in your Fuji camera and look at the exposure readout. Make sure that you're about a stop to about a stop and a half overexposed in camera. Now, it's not just that simple, but using F-Log is simple. I remember when I was using my Sony camera and I was first getting used to using the S-Log inside the cameras, there was a guy out there, I won't name him at all, but he was doing a tutorial on how to use S-Log, and he said, just expose 2 stops over and you're good to go. It's not that simple, but it is simple, like I said. So first, after you've done all your manual settings and then you've exposed about a stop to a stop and a half over, check on your highlights. You cannot recover highlight data inside a lot of these new digital cameras unless you're shooting on RAW cameras like Arris or Reds and stuff like that. And even then, there's only so much highlight detail that you can recover. So how do we do this and protect our highlights? If you have the new XT3 or if you have an external monitor and you don't have the XT3, turn on zebras. Now, if you don't know what zebras are as well, they're basically these little tiny like continuous zebra patterns that will show up on the screen, and they'll basically show you all the areas in the frame where your highlights are clipping, because you can recover shadow detail a lot easier than you can recover highlight detail. So it's important that we're not clipping too much of your zebras at all. In my Fuji X-T3, I currently set my zebras to about 100. I know a lot of people who do it a little bit lower just to kind of over prepare. I set them at 100, it's been fine for me so far. So after you have your zebras on and you make sure that you're protecting your highlights, that's definitely going to give you a lot more of a good overall exposure. Now, not all the time do you always want to protect every inch of your highlights, because sometimes you might run into the issue where you're basically going to cast a lot of shadow over your character's face or your subject's face or whatever it is that is your subject at all in frame. So sometimes I will clip the most minute amount of my highlights just to be able to save for shadow detail. Like right now in my Fuji camera, I clipped a little bit of the highlights in the back in the river here and then the sun right up there in order to get a nice exposure on me. So not every scenario is created equally. But again, when you're exposing, make sure that you're still exposed over at least about a stop. If you're not, your shadows in your footage and your F-Log footage, when you go into post-production, are going to be all sorts of noisy and your footage is not gonna look good at all. So that's gonna really help you guys when exposing F-Log. Now the last tip that I have for you that's really awesome, and I can't thank Fuji enough, is if you have an external monitor like the Small HD Focus or the Ninja Atomos, you can actually download 3 of the LUTs off of Fuji's website for F-Log to be able to download those LUTs, put them on an SD card, pop them in your monitor, and then you can actually live view that LUT over your F-Log footage, which will give you basically an overall view of what your footage will look like. Now they include 3 on there. One is gonna be Fuji F-Log to Rec 709, the next one's gonna be Fuji F-Log to Eterna, and the next one's gonna be Fuji F-Log to Wide Dynamic Range. Currently, that's my personal favorite. It helps the workflow a lot, so I definitely recommend checking those out if you can. If you don't know what LUTs are, they basically stand for lookup table. They're basically a mathematically color generated filter in layman's terms. We'll just call it for that. Now, for the hardcore guys out there, I know it's not a filter, but it is basically going to color correct your image from that log gamma to Rec 709, which is industry standard of contrast and saturation in your image to look like a much more normal image and not like what I showed you guys in the beginning of this video. So that was probably all I had for you guys today as far as using F-Log, as far as exposing it. We're gonna get into a video later on down the line as far as my post-production process on color correcting, color grading F-Log. And if you guys have any further comments, maybe something I didn't mention in this video, put it down below and let me know. This way maybe we can talk about it. I don't know everything. Maybe there was something that I said wrong or I missed, so throw that down below and let me know too. A lot, it helps. And last of all, I just want to thank everybody who's new here to this channel, who's been subscribing, who's been commenting on all my videos. And if you haven't seen my previous videos, go ahead and check those out. Look on the channel, on all my other Fuji videos. But this has been another video by Sean for Venture Art House. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys again in the next one.